Hello guys, in this little tutorial I will show you how to use my Unity game asset in a few. So let's start right up with the first thing. We can create an item by right-clicking the menu and then we go on create and on item. This is how we create every item. Then we can name it. I will just name it test here. And now we can set the specific values of the item. I will just use test things here, but you can write your serious data in there and use your self-made sprites. So the next thing we want to do is we want to create a game object. I will do it in the item folder that I can find it later. And then I have to place it in my world. It's in nowhere at the moment. So then we have to add a rigid body to this game object. This is not necessary, but it's nice. And then we can add the item script. Here it's pretty easy. We just have to add our value to the item value and we have to set the tag. If that is done, we can just go in the playtesting and we will see here that when we look at the item, it will have our name in the game value. This is a test item. So the next thing we want to do is to create an enemy. For this we go right click create and then enemy. Then we can name our enemy anything we want. Be sure to set the stats here. HP must be set, otherwise it doesn't work. But you can pretty much set anything. The attack value doesn't do anything at the moment. Then we can set a new spawn item. For that we have to create it at first. So just as always, right click create drops and then enemy. You can name it anything you want. You won't see this name, but be sure to remember it. Now we can set a prefab. I will set the item that we just created to a prefab so that it works, because I forgot to make that. You can make a prefab by just dragging the item in the editor, project editor, and then it gets a prefab. So as you can see, you can just use any prefab there in the object and you can set the probability. It's percent, so I made it 50% of the time drop that item. And now we can just add it to the drops of the enemy. And I also forgot to set the name, so I made it now. Now it's time to create the enemy itself. So just as always, create any game object. I'm using a cylinder here. Now I am also as well adding a rigid body. This is not necessary, but it's nice. And then I'm adding the enemy script. Here you just have to add the enemy object into the object value and be sure to not forget to set the tag. I will just freeze the rotation here so it doesn't fall over, and don't forget the tag. That's really important in this asset to set the tags. And when we now test it, we can see that it should show the name. And if we kill it, yeah, it shows cool enemy. And if we kill it, it's taking a while because it has so much HP. But then it should, or probably not, drop the item that we set it. It dropped it. The next thing we want to do is to create a new breakable object. For that we just right click, create breakable object, then we have to set the name. I will use test here, and we have to give it a specific tool, a time between breaks, and the name here. I will just use an X and give it the name test breakable. Also the time between breaks is in seconds. Now we can add a drop. For that we need to create the drop probability. Here we go, also create drops breakable. And this one is different from the enemy because you can use a direct item value. So you can use your test item with a probability of 100%. This is not a prefab, so it gets added directly in your inventory. This could also be changed in the code if you want. I can look at that if you have a question about that. Now we just have to create the game object, give it a rigid body again, this is not necessary, and then we can give it a breakable script, and here we just have to add our object we just created. Also, do not forget the tag, it's very important, it won't work otherwise. So, and now I forgot to add the breakable object drop probability, so we have to add that too. And if we now test it and we use an X on this object, we should also see in the preview that this requires an X to break, right? And if we break it, we get our test items. So now we get to the last thing, to the crafting. First we have to create a crafting recipe. This is the easiest part by far. It gets very complicated by the end, but this tutorial should help you guys. So first we have to create the crafting station and the crafting recipe. We have to create the crafting station right now because we have to refer to it in the recipe. The station can just have a name and the recipe in it. The crafting recipe also has a station and the item values. Those are the required items to craft the result. So here I would just use one test item to craft an apple. And after we've done that, we can create our crafting station at first. This might be a little bit confusing, but I am sure you can do it. So first we have also, I will add a rigid body. Again, this is not necessary, but you can do it. Do not forget the tag. Now we can add the crafting. So at the crafting station, you can just add this one here. With the submit button, this is the crafting submit button, it should be the only one visible. For the crafting slots, you will need to type crafting and then add the crafting prefabs 1 to 4. Those are also on the player UI. You can change their name, but you can just do it like I do it in the video. Just add crafting 1 to 4. For the output slot, you can just search for output and use that one. And for inventory, just click on it and there should only be one. The inventory script is also on the player. And now if we play the game, it should work, so we should be able to craft this apple using our test item. You can see the name works just fine, and if we drag it in, we get our apple. So thank you guys for watching. I hope this tutorial helps you guys out with the asset, and yeah.